I will say at once that I have already taken on a barrage of criticism and condemnation, so it is not necessary to engage in demoralizing now. I'll just share my story with you. Perhaps this will serve as a lesson, and maybe someone else was in the same situation as me. And you can subscribe and watch other animations. After all, we still have a lot of interesting stories. My name is Julia. I was 17 when I became a mother, and I still do not know who the father of the child and how it all happened. I only remember that evening, but all in order. To begin with, I was the oldest child in the family. In general, there are 3 of us. In addition to me, there are 2 sisters. Even though our parents worked very hard, we still had enough money to live on. I understood perfectly well that as the eldest child in a large family, I simply had to study well, get a decent education in order to get a job in the future, and take care of my family. My parents weren't young. For this reason, I gave up all my energy to study. Just so you know, I didn't have any friends or romantic relationships with guys just because I protected myself from it. All this could interfere with academic performance and consequently disrupt plans. And everything seemed to go as planned. I was the head of the class, the favorite of the teachers, a diligent student and an obedient daughter. But I was unhappy inside. It seemed to me that I was not living for myself, and what I was doing now was not mine either. As soon as these thoughts crossed my mind, I pushed them away. Sitting around and being sad is not a luxury my family can't afford. And then one day the school had to hold a disco. Everyone loved this kind of party. I never went there, but this time the teacher told me how to control the Headman classmates. They will go to the dance if they pass the history test as well, the teacher said. Well, otherwise they will not be allowed to the evening, and I, as the headman, had to make sure that no one got there. Of course, many people failed the test, but the desire to go to the disco remained. I did everything to prevent my classmates from getting there. First, I made several warnings, and then I threatened to give the teacher a list of violators by name. This was a weighty argument, and my classmates gave up, so I thought. No one spoke to me the next day. They made me an outcast, stopped greeting me, did not notice, ignored absolutely all words. A week later, I couldn't stand it and apologized. Even though I didn't have any friends, it's not so nice to suddenly become an empty place. The guys didn't immediately forgive me, but then one of my classmates told me that I should come to his house for a party and hang out with them properly. Of course, I did not immediately agree, but then I thought that maybe I deserved a rest at least once. When I got home, I fed everyone dinner, cleaned up, waited until everyone was asleep, and quietly left. When I arrived at the designated address, I saw a large house in front of me where music was blaring all over the street. When my classmates saw me, they clapped and said they were happy to see me. I didn't even know what to do next because this is the first party in my life. They offered me a drink, but I refused. Then I was told that I should play a game where the loser drank as much alcohol as they poured for him. Of course, I lost. And at first I refused to play, but I was again addressed as boring, excellent student, too correct, and I challenged myself. In a few minutes, I was drunk. Then I vaguely remember what happened, only fragments. As if I felt bad, I was in the toilet, then someone helped me up to the room. I was so sleepy. They helped me take off my clothes, and that was it. I fell right to sleep. And in the morning, I woke up and saw myself sleeping without clothes in a strange room on a bed. I was alone. There was an unpleasant taste of alcohol aftertaste in my mouth. My head ached and my lower abdomen ached terribly. There was blood on the bed, but I didn't care. I could not even think that something like this could happen to me. I screamed when I saw the time. The clock was 10 a.m. I was late to school and never came home. After a quick wash, I ran to school. My classmates greeted me with cheers and applause. My instantly flushed cheeks spoke for themselves. Hell, something obviously happened yesterday that everyone knows about except me. At recess in the toilet, the girls came up to me with questions about how I felt. I didn't really say anything. And then they whispered in my ear that I was now one of the others. Others? Any others? I asked. They looked at each other and realized that I didn't remember anything. Well, the next sentence gave me a shock. It turns out I wasn't alone last night. But who was I with? No one knows. I needed time to digest the information. I was just horrified by what I heard. But that's not all. When I got home, my mother gave me a full lecture. I didn't want to believe what was happening. After a couple of months, the discussions ended, and by the way, I still have friends, and I'm back on track, with the exception of my condition. My body was behaving strangely. I didn't understand what was happening to my body, my well-being. A month later, I got a small belly. I went to the hospital for discomfort and pain and heard from the doctor that I was pregnant. Oh no! Oh no! This can't be happening! How? How did this happen? The doctor looked at me in surprise and said that she was obliged to inform my parents about everything. I begged her not to do it, but she said she would then report it to the appropriate authorities. I chose the lesser of evils. My mother arrived at the hospital in 10 minutes. She was as shocked as I was. And the most shameful thing is that I could not answer the basic questions. How and from whom? At home, I had a long, painful conversation with my parents. In the end, we decided to keep the baby. To be honest, this decision was not easy because it meant that I had to radically change my life. And first, I dropped out of school, accepted that I didn't know who the baby's father was, and put off my plans for a good job. My parents supported me, though not immediately. My mother told me that the child had nothing to do with it and that she and my father would do anything to help me. And now, very soon, I will become a mother. These have been difficult months in my life, but I feel like I did the right thing. No matter what, I will give the child all the love. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca, and I'm only 13 years old. I think every girl dreams of becoming a mother in the future, and I wanted to do it. But I didn't think that I would become a mother at such an early age. I'm the youngest in the family. I have a sister, Emily. We have grown up as friends since childhood. They shared their secrets. Together, we were hooligans and didn't turn each other if anything happened. We have always had a strong mutual support. Unfortunately, we don't mother. She died when I was a baby. Dad raised us, but we rarely saw him. He worked as a truck driver. He was always on the road and was at home at most a couple times a week. But when he came, he always brought something delicious or gave us a toy. We always greeted him with joy, even took us on a couple of trips. It was a very fun trip. We drove around most of the country and slept inside a trailer. But there were times when my father stopped somewhere not far from the fields and we would set up a tent right in the open air. We lit a fire, and at such moments, my father began to tell us all sorts of interesting stories from life. Horror movies, too. But this atmosphere was very pleasant to us. There was a beautiful starry sky around, and from the fire there was a slight warmth and silence around. Only an occasional car passed. But such times were rare. My sister and I were mostly alone. So Emily replaced my parents. As an adult, my sister got a job. I feel bored and feel lonely. She left early and came home late. All the housework was on me. But it wasn't hard at all. When no one really lives at home, there's not much to clean. Life was moderate. One day, when she came home from work, Emily said that she felt nausea and acute abdominal pain. We urgently went to the hospital with her and she was urgently scheduled for an examination. And then I found out that my sister was pregnant. She didn't tell me who the children's father was. Yeah, okay, did not want to talk about it. I'm not going to insist. I tried to help her in any way I could. Dad was in shock at this unexpected news. But he knew it was his fault, too, that he didn't pay enough attention to us. The birth went well. As it turned out, she had a double one. Gave birth to 2 little angels, twins named Thomas and Mark. A year after giving birth, my sister went back to work. She couldn't stay home. She asked me to look after the children, but I still had school and I wouldn't have been able to keep up with them. After a little thought, she asked to change her schedule at work so that she can look after the children until lunch and I can look after them after school. It wasn't easy at first. I was afraid to even take them in my arms. I didn't know how and what to feed them, what to do if they cry all the time. Maybe if there was one child, I still somehow would have coped, but when there were 2 of them, it was twice as difficult. If Thomas calmed down, Mark would start crying. And when Mark calmed down, Thomas would get turned on. Both of them shouted incessantly. They spat out their nipples all the time. I thought they were pining for their mother. I decided to wear them and went for a walk with them. Not noticeably skipped all day. Later, Emily wrote me full instructions on what to do and how to do it. At house was not a moment of peace. In a short time, I was already deftly beginning to cope with my nephews. I even had time to do my own thing. Sometimes I tried to spoil them with all sorts of cookies. They didn't grow up that much. Once I remember I was in a hurry to go to school. I was supposed to have an exam that day. I spent all night preparing for it and fell asleep only in the morning. Not hearing the alarm woke up 5 minutes before the start. In a panic, I started to quickly pack all my things and was ready to run to school. But going down the stairs, I accidentally tripped and fell. So badly that I broke my leg. Emily immediately called an ambulance and I was put in a cast. So I didn't make it to the exam that day. Of course, I was very upset, but I couldn't go with a broken leg. I had to stay at home for a couple of days. I couldn't even get out of bed properly. The twins were very sorry for me. These 2 days, they were always sitting next to my bed. They tried to cheer me up. Thomas read me a book, and Mark even brought me breakfast in bed. It was so sweet. But suddenly, Mark asked me, "Mom, when will your leg stop hurting?" His words left me in shock. I didn't expect them to say the word mom. Not knowing what to say, I just replied that very soon. Then I lay for a long time and thought. In the evening, I told my sister that her children think that I am their mother. Emily just laughed and said that when they are a little teen, then they will explain everything to them. So at such an early age, I became a mother to my nephews.